Alright, so today we'll be working on 9.4, solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So let's begin. For an expression of the form x squared plus bx, you can add a constant c to the expression so that x squared plus bx plus c is a perfect square trinomial. And this process is known as completing the square. So here are the steps. So the first thing you're going to do is identify what your b is, right? The b is whatever the second one is with to the power of 1, right? So this is our b. And what we're going to do is find what 1/2 of b is. So if this b is, say, 2, what's the half of 2? 1. And once again, the b is the coefficient of x. Once you figure out what your b is equal to, you're going to square it, b over 2. So if we had, say, the number 2 and the half of 2 is 1, we'd square 1. And then you would add your answer back to the original equation, right? So you could add whatever your answer from step 2 back to this original equation. And whatever your answer is, b over 2, that will also be part of the final answer. So it's an easy shortcut for you. So this might be a little confusing, so let's go ahead and try it out. So we have x squared plus 6x, right? So let me rewrite up here, x squared plus 6x. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is identify what our b is, right? And our b is positive 6. So that's our b. Now what we're going to do is our first step after that is to find what half of b is. So find 1/2 of b, right? And 1/2 of b is, what is 1/2? Our b is 6. So b over 2 is going to be equal to 6 over 2, which is equal to 3. So now, whatever our answer was over here, right? It was b over 2, right? This b over 2 is equal to 3. We're going to square that now. So in this case, our b over 2 is 3. So we're going to do 3 squared, which is 9. Once you get that, you're going to add this answer back to your original equation. And our original equation was x squared plus 6x. So we're going to add this 9 now. And now, what we're going to do is we're going to factor the resulting expression as the square of the binomial. And notice here that it says b over 2 to the power of 2 is equal to this, right? We have this down. We have the left side down. Now, what we can do is we can take our b over 2, which was 3, and we can plug that in. X plus 3 squared, right? And if this is a little confusing to you why we're using 3 and not 9, go ahead and use the FOIL method, the Xbox method, and plug it in and see if it does really end up being 3. Let's try it on your own. Or let's try another one. So this time we have x squared minus 9x. Let's see, x squared minus 9x. So what is our b in here? Our b is negative 9. So the first thing we're going to do is find what 1/2 of b is. So b over 2. Where b is negative 9. And this is equal to negative 4.5. But since this is a decimal, we'll just keep this one. It'll be easier to work with. And now we have negative 9 over 2, we're going to do the b over 2 to the power of 2. And our b over 2 was equal to negative 9 over 2. Negative 9 over 2. So we're going to square that. And since this is going to be a big funky number, we're just going to leave it as is. Actually, let's go ahead and solve it. Why not? So 81 over 4. If that's a little confusing, that's the same thing as negative 9 squared and 2 to the power of 2. It's the same thing, right? It's the same answer still. Let's do our step 3 now. And remember, step 3 is to add the result from step 2 back to the original equation, right? We're going to add it back now. So we have x squared minus 9x plus 81 over 4. Alright, so now we're going to factor this. And this is when you'll really want to use this. It'll be a little difficult to factor it otherwise. So notice that we got to figure out what our b over 2 is, because that's going to be our final answer. B over 2 is negative 9 over 2, so we can use that to our advantage. So now we have x plus b over 2, negative 9 over 2. And we're going to square this whole thing, right? Because that's what it says to do right here. And when we simplify that, we get, remember, positive times a negative is negative. So we have x 9 over 2 to the power of 2. Alright, so now, let me erase this. We're going to be solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So this method of completing the square can be used to solve any quadratic equation. Okay? To solve a quadratic equation by completing the square, you must write the equation in the form x squared plus bx equals d. Right? So this one's a little different from the previous one. Notice that we didn't have this d here last time. We didn't have an equal symbol and the d symbol right here. This one was just x squared minus 9x. So now we have an extra number here, negative 15. So we're still going to do the same method, except a few things are going to change. Alright? So let's go ahead. First step, find out what b is. And our b is negative 16. So remember, we got to do b over 2. And our b is negative 16. So we have negative 16 divided by 2. Negative 16 divided by 2 is 8. Negative 8. Right? Our next step is to square it. Negative 8 to the power of 2. And that's going to equal 64. But in this case, we're not going to necessarily use 64 the whole time. So keep it like this. Keep the negative 8 squared. And remember, after this, what we're going to do is, let's do it over here. Let me make this a little better. So our next step is to plug this back into our original equation. So we have x squared minus 16x. And here we're going to write plus negative 8 squared. Right? We're not going to leave it as 64. Equals negative 15 plus, I'm running out of space here. Alright, so now we're going to simplify this. So, like we did before, we're going to figure out how we're going to write the square binomial for this side. And remember what we did up here, right? Our b over 2, whatever our answer was up here, was in our final answer as well, the square of a binomial. So this 3 also ended up in the final answer, x plus 3 squared. So we're going to do the same thing, right, for this side. So we had negative 8. So that means we'll have x, not 3, x minus 8 to the power of 2 is equal to negative 15 plus negative 8 squared. Negative 8 squared was equal to 64. When you add up negative 15 plus 64, you get 49. Alright, so now we have this 2 up here as for our exponent. So how can we get rid of this, right? We can't solve this until we get rid of it. So what we're going to have to do is do the opposite of an exponent. That means we'll need to figure out, since it's to the power of 2, the opposite of the power of 2 would be finding the square root. So let's find the square root. So let's do this. Square root of both sides. Square root of x minus 8 to the power of 2 is just x minus 8. And then the square root of 49 is going to be positive negative 7. And if that's a little confusing, I'll explain why. 7 to the power of 2 is equal to 49. And if we have, now if we have negative 7 to the power of 2, that's also equal to 49, right? Because a negative times a negative equals positive. So now that we have that, we can finally simplify this, right? And to simplify this, we need to get x by itself, which means we need to get rid of this negative 8. To do that, we can add 8 to both sides, which leaves us with x. We have two answers now, right? Because one positive, one negative. So x 8 plus 7, and x equals 8 minus 7. That means x is equal to 8 plus 7 is 15, and 8 minus 7 is 1. So those are our two answers. Let me see if I can make this a little smaller here. Oh. Alright, and that is it for today.